this 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 podcast, whatever it is,
Yeah.
cut, come back.
Okay.
Today's episode is about. Are you laughing?
Yeah, just because we've had so many starts to this, but that's okay. Today's episode is February 13th.
Okay.
We start out in Christchurch, which is a lovely city. Oh my God, so cool. So we're there.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Okay. February 13th, Christchurch, easy morning, get up, and we drive out towards the Southern Alps to a place called Rubicon Valley. And this is to visit about farming. And we have a really nice drive, and we're struck again by all the hedges, right? Apparently, they go ahead and they plant these huge hedges, and then a commercial company comes through with like a big circular saw and cuts these guys off at maybe 20, 30 foot high. 20
Okay.
foot high.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, maybe 20, 15 or 20. I always have to do you this. Okay.
The possums were really this big. Without the tails, just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
we went back and checked on this one.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so these hedges are maybe 20 foot tall. They're really big, and they have apparently a great big circular saw mounted on a truck, and they go ahead and cut them off
Yeah.
at the top and cut off the sides.
And the
So
sides.
There's these huge hedges.
right.
And it's really remarkable that way.
And can I say the hedges, there is a lot of wind in this area.
Right.
So the hedges are often for the livestock because there are no barns here. The livestock are outside 24/7 every day of the year. They just don't have barns. It's pretty interesting.
That's a good
Grass-fed
point.
livestock, no barns. So it's a windbreak too.
Yeah. Anyways, and on the drive out, our guide gave us a talk about some of the problems that they have, particularly with cattle raising and pollution. So their problems are that they end up getting a lot of phosphates and a lot of nitrates down into their aquifers from the fertilization of their pastures and crops.
And run off into their lakes.
Yeah, and then they also have runoff into their lakes. So that in the North Island, which is more intensely agricultural, something like 60% of their streams and lakes.
Yeah, they said we're polluted.
Yeah.
Which was surprising that it's that high because we think of New Zealand as more pure.
Yeah.
But
But they have their issues too.
they do.
Anyways, we ended up going out to this place in the Rubicon Valley, and it's a retired policeman that runs this thing, and he takes people horseback riding. He gives demos on sheep shearing and trains some dogs in order to
and we're going to bring them in a little bit quicker.
do the sheep.
I'm going to try and
He's
pull
trying
her
to
off.
do it realistically, the way it would be on a farm. And so he has the same kinds of dogs and he trains them
but I am going
as
to pull her
though
off
they
because the other
were
days you
herding
pushed them
sheep
in hard
on
and
a
put the sheep
farm.
clean over the fence.
And then he uses his neighbor's
I'm
sheep.
going to try and
He has
pull her
an
off
agreement
before
with
we get
him
too far. Come out.
and gives you a show where he shows you how the dogs herd the sheep.
Right.
Pretty fun to watch.
It was a good show. So he had two dogs.
He had two dogs.
He had a third dog, but it was young and not ready. So he had two mature dogs. One was a border collie, which was really active and smart, and the other one was a type of dog called a huntaway. And sheep farmers will have at least one of each of these two types of dogs. And the border collie will move the sheep along without barking. They don't come across as aggressive with the sheep, and they'll move them really gently.
And they have all these commands, like walk, and the dog would slow down and just go very slowly to herd them, or it could do them fast,
Right.
and it could move them into different areas.
Right.
pretty interesting.
Walk up means approach them and what is it? Move right, and they would
certain commands.
move away, and they would take the dogs would move right and move toward. Anyways, he had these commands.
All these commands.
And he would just move the dogs, and the dogs would move the sheep. The huntaways were used when they really needed to move the sheep further and faster. And the huntaways would bark. And
they would get behind the sheep and bark, and the sheep would run.
Yeah. So
and they did. He only had like 6 or 8 sheep or something that he was demonstrating with, but when that dog came out and started barking, they took off.
Right.
In fact, one of them got so nervous it took off and went the opposite direction that it had just come from, and then the dog had to go back after chasing it and bring it back. So that was pretty exciting.
Matter of fact, the huntaway dog, the one that barks, he had acquired it from a neighbor who gave up on this dog and said that he couldn't work with it because, as it turns out, it wouldn't bark, and it was afraid of sheep. So he'd put it into the thing with the sheep, and it would try to crawl out under the fence to get away from the sheep. He had a dickens of a time trying to get it to bark. Yeah,
so you had to train it. But it did it.
Yeah, it was coming along when we were there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, he also raised alpaca. And alpaca are raised mostly for the fur.
Yes, and he sells them.
And he sells the alpaca.
He said he can sell a female alpaca for $8,000. So, yeah.
Right. Okay, and then he gave us a demonstration on sheep shearing and talked about it and said, you know, a really good sheep shearer can do one in 30 seconds.
Yeah, just amazing.
Yeah, and he said what? There was a woman that just won this sheep shearing competition where she sheared for 8 hours and averaged the sheep every 47 seconds.
28 seconds.
No, 47.
No, 28.
We'll look it up.
Well, how are we going to look it up? Oh, she was trying to get a world record, so maybe it's online.
Okay. We're going to disagree on this one. 28 seconds, I recall it being the fastest you could shear a sheep. But she did one every 47 seconds for 8 hours. So
whatever she did beat the record.
Yes.
She's in whatever that book is for records.
Right. Okay. Anyways, I got to shear. Well, I didn't shear a sheep. I snipped off a little bit of hair. It's pretty close to shearing a sheep.
It is close to shearing a sheep.
Interestingly enough, they say that at this point, the demand for wool, for carpets and for clothing and so forth has gone down so much that the price is terrible, but that the price for New Zealand lamb has gone up so much that now the market is for lambs, for meat, and the only reason that they shear the sheep is just to keep them healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. Anyways, we had a nice lunch out there. The wife fixed a typical sort of lunch, apparently. It was good.
Yeah, it was lamb on the Barbie, and
yeah, there was lamb
burgers on the Barbie, and
sausage,
beef sausage.
And then we took the bus back into town, and we got dropped off, and we walked around town for the rest of the day. And we went over by Christ College, which is it's actually a high school, a preparatory high school, and
private and very English
and very expensive.
Yes.
Quite exclusive.
Yes. And it looks like a Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Hogwarts school.
The sort of architecture and the outfits that they wore. The boys had these striped blazers, and then their ties had these really bold stripes on them going horizontally. So we took a couple pictures of them, hung out there for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, not long. And then we went to the Botanic Gardens and spent about an hour and a half, I guess, at the Botanic Gardens. They're old. They're about, 150
50
years
old, I think. Yeah. And they were the first Botanic Gardens in New Zealand, and it was huge, just a huge area, and lovely.
Right.
We got the tram tour, so we got on a tram, and the tram tour was like 50 minutes long. So it gives you an idea. And we didn't go fast, but still, it took that long to go around the park.
They had these giant sequoias and all sorts of huge trees. They had this one. Well, we won't.
Yeah, there's a huge rose garden too. That was lovely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we left there and we walked around town and did some shopping because Terry's looking for a better raincoat in preparation for getting over into Milford Sound and up into the mountains.
The statue of Robert Scott.
Yeah, we came across this statue for Robert Falcon Scott, the Antarctic explorer that died in a second expedition. And his wife was on her way to join him when he died. And so the city commissioned her to make a statue of him, and that's what's there. She carved that statue, and that was quite moving.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of advertisements up for something called Sail Grand Prix, where they're going to, next month, they're going to have this big international race with sailboats that sail up on hydrofoils. It's big trimarans up on hydrofoils, and they go like 60 kilometers an hour. It'll be remarkable, but we won't see it. And we went by this one bakery. It had some wonderful looking stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was time for dinner.
And let me just come back a minute to
Sure.
the Robert Scott statue. Is they made the point that Christchurch was the jumping off point when people were racing to get to Antarctica or trying to go to Antarctica. Christchurch was the jumping off point to be able to get there. And there are still something like 8 countries that have a presence in Christchurch for their Antarctic supplies and supplying.
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyways, so we went to a restaurant area, and the names of these restaurants were kind of fun. There was Delilah and Amazonita and
Zodiac. Chihuahua.
Chihuahua, Chiwahwah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Kong.
Kong,
Oh, there was another one about a snake. King Snake.
King of Snakes.
King of Snakes.
Yeah.
Like, what? Who would name a restaurant that? But anyway.
And we ended up eating at Original Sin.
Yes.
And we had a nice meal there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we started out with some nice New Zealand wine and had some olives, and then we had fish in paper, in
Papillote.
yeah,
something
whatever
like
it is.
Mm-hmm.
And some linguine with seafood and something called polenta fries that were really tasty.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, we went over to the little store around the corner and had gelato, and then walked back to the hotel. On the way back to the hotel, we stopped at, we wanted to go into, but we couldn't get in, a place called the Christchurch Transitional Cathedral.
Anglican Church.
Cathedral, right?
Yes.
And what happened was that with the big 2011 earthquake, the main cathedral was badly damaged, and so they needed a temporary one. And a Japanese architect came up with a structure that was made largely out of cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was called the Cardboard Temporary Cathedral. But it's still standing, and it's wonderful. And now they've changed the name to the Christchurch Transitional Cathedral.
Mm-hmm. And they're still rebuilding the cathedral because they didn't start rebuilding it until something like 2020 is when the agreements were signed, because there were arguments between the New Zealand diocese and the Anglican Church headquarters, which is
in England.
Yeah, in England. What's the name of the head of the Anglican Church?
Doesn't matter. Anyways, yeah.
So, but it is being rebuilt now.
Right. And then we went to bed.
Yep. Full day, very full day.
Indeed.
Lovely town.
Yeah, it's a great town. Christchurch was a remarkably nice town.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, love you.
Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.
Bye.